All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very special guest, Anthony Mele of AMI Global Security. He is an international arms dealer. This has been something that I've been interested in for some time now, and so I'm happy to have him on the show. Many of you may wonder, what does this have to do with anything? But this show covers politics, and I think Mr. Mele here plays a critical role in advancing the global policy, the foreign policy of the United States government. So we're here just to interview him to get an insight into the international arms trade and how that affects the foreign policy of the United States government and our allies around the world. So, Mr. Mele, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and your background, your history, and how you got started.
Oh, well, thank you, Jarrell. Yeah. So I'm Anthony Mele, that's spelled M-E-L-E. I own AMI Global Security. I'm a defense trade broker and international security consultant. So I've been in the defense contracting business for a good going on 30 years in one realm or another. And so AMI Global Security basically works in international security consulting, defense contracting, and government contracting, foreign government contracting, around the world. So I've worked and been around and through at least 53 countries on the planet over the span of my career. So I've worked mostly in Africa, the Ivory Coast, Central Africa, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Dubai, Jordan, and throughout Europe, Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Russia.
Out of all those regions, which is your favorite region to work in?
New York.
Okay, that's great. That's great. That's great. Now, in the Ivory Coast, that's East Africa, correct?
East Africa.
Okay.
I just my last African trip was this year, and that was in Mali, Bamako.
Okay. All right, great. And how long have you been doing this for?
Well, I started out in the U.S. Army, so I'm a U.S. Army veteran.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. So I spent 6.5 years in the Army and very interesting in advanced assignments. So I was basically always I started out in the old guard, the 3rd U.S. Infantry, which is the Presidential Honor Guard at Fort Myer, Arlington National Cemetery. And then moved on to the Defense Intelligence Agency, Intelligence and Security Command, the United States training mission to Saudi Arabia, the Office of the Chief of Staff for Army Intelligence at the Pentagon, and then I transitioned off into private industry after that.
Okay, great. Real quick, before we get into some more specifics, have you seen the movies The Lord of War with Nicolas Cage or War Dogs with Jonah Hill at all?
Oh yeah, I consider that great comedies.
Okay, so that's nothing what your business is like, I take it. That's just a Hollywood take, huh?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a Hollywood take, but there was a time where it was rough and tumble. Now it's more highly regulated and closely scrutinized, and those what it portrayed what happened in those days was about the time when I used to be a bodyguard. So it was a bit rough and tumble. That was the times that I was running around the world doing those things. That was during the Soviet era. So there was an East-West paradigm. And so it was a bipolar political and military stance, right? So it was the United States and NATO versus the Soviet Union and Warsaw. So it was an East-West struggle. And the flow of arms was whatever one side can steal from the other to try and get the tactical advantage over the other. So be it in intelligence gathering or human intelligence gathering or in stealing weapons and technology and technology transfers. So then it was pretty much rough and tumble, and they needed guys like me to be bodyguards for guys who did things like that. So I was working as a bodyguard in the beginning. So in the beginning, I was a bodyguard to one of the top international arms dealers in the world, who was a contractor to the Defense Department and other agencies. So wherever he went, I went, whoever he met, I met. And so as such, I gained experience in the field, up close, from the front seat. So my life story is better than the movie.
Okay, great, great. So can you tell us a little bit about that on the ground experience? Like what I feel like your day-to-day routine involves a lot of paperwork and admin data stuff, but like with the contracting aspect of it. But when you talk about sourcing supplies that you're selling to the government, can you tell us a little bit about like how that works when you're going to these different warehouses, going to these suppliers and seeing the items in person and just some of the dealings does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, Jerome, you're on the right track. As I think in one of our earlier conversations, and what brought you and I together and why we're still talking, is that first and foremost, we're in the relationship business. So we have to build relationships, and then you build trust. Okay. So overall, and throughout my career, if I would say that the most valuable commodity that one can have is one to build trust and mutual trust in a business where there's no trust. And but when you have two parties that trust each other, that keep their word, then there's not much you cannot accomplish. So fast forward to these days, as you said, now it's mostly regulations and following, forms and applying for licenses and such. But the people who stand or fail are the difference between the ones who have a relationship with everyone along the supply chain and those who don't.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So if you can get into some specifics about, or like if you can't, that's fine too, about your trip to Mali. Like when you went to Mali, like what were you doing? Or if you want to talk about a trip that happened maybe 10 or 20 years ago where you were conducting business overseas, you can describe that as well, if that's more comfortable.
Sure.
To hear more about Mr. Mele's escapades in Mali, where he goes to Africa to buy gold bullion for investors, stay tuned for next week's clip.